So the other day, I ran a session for my players: Paladin, Artificer, Sorcerer, Wizard, Monk, and Cleric. And when they got to town, the Paladin quickly hit up the bar. He ordered OJ. The barmaid embarrassed him, asking if he wanted it in a sippy cup. He refused and cussed her out, after which he asked for the strongest drink they have. She reached to the bottom shelf and gave him some soft ale. He leaves disappointed. Later on, they entered a forest looking for a kobold den who have been suspected as thieves around town. In the forest, Paladin asked me if there are any orange trees. I, stupidly, say, yeah, I guess so, why? The next thing I knew, Artificer cast Enlarge on the Paladin, and the Paladin tells me, I ripped the tree from the ground and walked back to town with it on my shoulders. I wanted to see what he would do, so I say, okay. He proceeded to walk into the bar, has Artificer reduce the barmaid, then Paladin picks her up and throws her in the air like a baseball, and uses the tree as a bat. Swung her into the wall and just killed her. But he'd also done other chaotic things beforehand, so he kinda is now chaotic neutral, chaotic good. He left the tree in the bar and told the other workers, when I get back, there better be some damn orange juice. And that's one of my favorite D&D stories to date. He was sent to jail and sentenced to death, but the party managed to pull a prison break and they got themselves pardoned when they saved a high general and returned the town's stuff. However, town folks still don't like them much anymore. I'll start this off with explaining that this is the DM's first campaign, and the other players is new to the game. This is my third campaign, but the other two players are getting their first experience with D&D through this campaign. Not to mention, the story I'm telling takes place in only the second session we've ever had in this particular campaign. I'm going to introduce the party. A human female cleric named Evelyn Terwin, myself, and the dwarven barbarian named Giggly McNug, and the half-elf sorcerer named Bill DeVito. Yeah, I know. As the party was tracking a gang of goblins, and along the way, the third player, the half-elf sorcerer, joined in. Halfway through a battle, a couple of goblins, the DMs made us roll for perception checks. I lucked out and got an 18, so I was aware of goblins coming towards the party, and a door opened up just a smidge with a goblin watching us through it. The party took care of the goblins, and when it came to the door, I used a cantrip to fling the door, which sent one of the goblins flying and hitting a wall, taking 1d6 damage. The other goblin was quick to surrender to us, and we got the goblin to lead us to the treasure chest behind the wall. Inside the chest was a mistake made by the DM. Never, ever give me a bag of magic beans. The DM had me roll 3d4s for how many beans I got. Luckily, I got 12 of these things. Of course, I immediately went outside to grow one. The DM had me roll a d100 to select what the bean grew into, and I rolled a 98. So, a bean grew into a giant pyramid with a mummy lord inside. The barbarian and I rolled for strength, and we both opened the sarcophagus, releasing the mummy lord. Instinctively, we ran away, but I had the great idea to sneak in and get caught by the mummy, and my sneaking is a bust. Thinking quickly, I cast my cantrip light on the mummy's face. He failed his spell save and became blinded by the light. So I was free to do whatever without being seen, though I can be heard. Initially, I tried growing a bean on the mummy's face. Didn't work out. DM didn't allow it, so it grew behind the mummy and into a great giant tree. Nothing crazy. It didn't help, so I grew 2 more and got nests from both of them, with 9 eggs. I decided to throw the eggs all at the same time at the mummy, so the DM made me roll a dexterity check, and the mummy made a constitution saving throw. I beat the mummy, so all 9 eggs hit. He rolled 9 d20s for each egg, and any egg that rolled between 10 and 15 did 10d6 damage to the mummy, and 4 of the eggs made the cut. I ended up killing the mummy in one blow thanks to the magic beans. The DM was so disappointed with the outcome of this. He didn't like that I got 12 magic beans, and he certainly didn't want me to one-shot a mummy. I single-handedly leveled the entire party 2 levels by killing a mummy. The mummy is a C15 monster, I think. I don't know the terms of the class of monster. And I beat it single-handedly at level 3, using magic beans. Teal Deer. Goblin leads a party of 3 to a secret treasure chest with magic beans. The party grew beans, summoned a mummy lord, and one-shot it with eggs, leveling up to 5th level. I play a druid in a custom 5e campaign setting where one of our main villains is a buffed up Rakasha. During our first battle with him, my druid was mostly helpless. I knew none of my spells were a high enough level to affect him, leaving me with a bead of smiting that gave him one good thwack before I was out of options. After that session, I researched the level 7 spells that would be at my disposal and came across Whirlwind. It hit decently. It could move with concentration, and if I got really lucky, I could restrain. But reading it gave me a wild plan. The next session, the group begins its anti-Rakasha shopping, which I do a bit of as well. And over the next few months of sessions, I find pieces to put into place. When I gain a level 7 slot, I started keeping Whirlwind prepared but never mentioned it or used it, since I didn't want the DM to connect the dots. I find a Staff of Withering, and I know it can potentially give an enemy disadvantage on strength checks, which helps Whirlwind's restraint chances. I have a Robe of Displacement, made so that melee option is more appealing. I also make sure to keep a Potion of Speed on hand at all times. Some of this comes to me as we go, and the intentional components I get a bit at a time, keeping my cards close to the chest, knowing the Rakasha could eventually pop up at any point in time, being level 14. I only have one shot at hitting him with a spell. Eventually, the inevitable happens. A diversion not only lets the Rakasha get in close enough to initiate combat, but also get our wizard stuck in his own force cage. And for the first time since our first encounter with him, we enter combat. My druid's tactics are usually to hang back and throw lightning bolts until there's an opening for a heavier spell, as any time I have attempted any physical results have been hilarious. And yet, here I was, chugging a Potion of Speed, casting Shelag, and charging headfirst into melee. I connect, but he passes a saving throw. Our fighter misses with 3 spears in a row. Our wizard fails his save to escape the cage, and our barbarian has to dash just to get close, only to get charmed by the Rakasha's turn. The only other hit comes from our bard rogue, so this is not going well. Since I know a Rakasha doesn't stay dead, I was debating if this was the right time to pull this stunt. But with 2 party members incapacitated, it became my only option. On my turn, I take my hasted attacks again, with a beat of smiting this time. This is a show I'm putting on at this point since I'm still keeping the DM from sniffing me out. On the first attack, the Wand of Withering does its job, giving the Rakasha the disadvantage on strength saves I wanted. I take another swing just for show. It's a miss, but the job is done, so I get my distance. It's worth mentioning that despite some help from an otherworldly tentacle appendage he gained, the Rakasha is still not able to connect with any physical attacks on me. Our wizard still can't escape the cage. Our bard is ordered to attack the bard rogue on her turn, and the Rakasha banishes the fighter before he can attack, and before getting some distance, which is perfect for me. I take my one shot, Whirlwind at level 7. The Rakasha fails the dex save and takes the full damage, and has to make a strength save under the effect of the Staff of Withering. He fails, restraining him in the wind. I specifically set the whirlwind not center on the Rakasha, wanting the wind to beat him in the face, meaning when I take my haste movement to stand up in the front of the spell, I'm upwind of him. At this point, I take a more recent item off my belt, a pouch of holding. I had it made after we needed to sacrifice a bag of holding to save the day, claiming it was a disposable one in case we needed to do it again, but this was the real intention. And I had just set this up at the beginning of the session. With my hasted action, I turned the pouch inside out, releasing its contents into the wind. My anti-Rakasha purchase from months before, 50 blessed throwing daggers. When I bought them, I confused the hell out of the DM, who didn't know what a druid expected to do against the Rakasha with throwing knives. Reading the rules of Whirlwind back then, it said small objects that weren't held down got stuck up in the wind as well, which made me wonder what those objects did to someone trapped inside. This is when I found out. The roll was 50 D20s to see how many daggers connected, which ended up being 27, meaning 27 D4s for piercing damage and 27 D6s for radiant damage. With the whirlwind added in one turn I did 190 damage, killing the Rakasha easily to the amazement of my party. This was months of planning coming together in a perfect scenario where the dice rolled in my favor at every point they needed to. The potion, the staff, the spell, the pouches, the dagger, everything designed for one all-or-nothing play, and somehow actually worked. I've never attempted a stunt like this before, and it was amazing to realize it was actually working. Even if the Rakasha comes back, I'm completely satisfied with this victory. If only for the stunned shock of the DM as he realized what I've been up to all this time.